There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews. So welcome. For those of you who if it's your first time with us today, we want to say welcome, first of all. I also want to say to you that this podcast is for anyone out there who either has a podcast, doesn't matter if you've been doing it for 5 months or 5 years, or someone who's thinking about doing a podcast, doesn't matter if you've been thinking about it for 5 months or 5 years. What we want to do is just let you know that there is no cookie cutter way to do a podcast. And we have so many people that come to us that want to know, oh, should I, or how could I do one? Well, we have guests on our show that can show you how they did theirs and what made theirs special. So you can feel good about starting yours or even growing yours from that standpoint. So that is it. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews. I am a productivity and profits consultant. And what I want to do is share with you how you can use podcasting to be more productive in your life and in your career as well. So our first part of the Productive Podcast is, I want to change it. The first part of today's show is to tell you to share this. That's right. To tell you to share this, to subscribe, to make sure that you get this out to everyone, to let them know to pay attention to the Productive Podcaster. Now, the second part of the Productive Podcaster is a segment I like to call Pros and Cons.
Pros and Cons.
Now, you're probably wondering, what is pros and cons, Barrett? Well, I'm going to tell you what pros and cons is. Pros and cons is a part of the show where I give you a tip on how to be a professional podcaster and to make sure that you can be a productive podcaster at the same time. So I read an article and it was asking people were asking should they grow their audience organically or should they tap into someone else's audience? And my answer is yes. Because it's going to help you to do better if you can get both types of audiences. Those that you build on your own, of course, because those are your true followers. Those are your people. You want to have them. But there's nothing wrong with having someone else's audience that likes you too. So, for instance, with the Productive Podcaster, we have guests on here all the time. And their audience may like what we do here. So guess what? They want to follow us. I've been on other people's podcasts, and those people want to follow me sometimes. So it's not unnatural for that to happen. So make sure that you do both. That is the answer to that question. So I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with Robert Szentes, and he's going to blow your mind. I'm not going to tell you why, but you just need to stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of the Productive Podcaster.
You've heard the rumblings. You've even thought of starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all the hard work for you so you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or just go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
guys, welcome back to the Productive Podcast. And once again, I'm Dr. Barrett Matthews. I want to welcome you guys. As I mentioned to you before we went on break, I have a fantastic guest today. Robert Szentes is here. Guess what he's going to do? He's going to show you how to make that transformation. Some of you have been sitting there saying, man, I got to do this, but I don't know. I seem to be stuck. I don't know how I'm going to make these things happen. There's something that's holding me back. I need something to help me break through it. Well, Robert is here to show you how to do that. And his podcast helps people all the time in making those breakthroughs. So without any further ado, I want to welcome to the Productive Podcaster, none other than Robert Szentes. Robert, welcome to the Productive Podcaster.
Thank you, Barrett. Good to be here.
It's great to have you, man. Great to have you. So tell me, what is the name of your podcast?
It's called Prosperity Mindset.
Prosperity Mindset. I get excited just hearing those two words. I do. Prosperity. Because they're two things that we all need to have. A prosperity mindset. In this world, we have to grow, and we're going to have to do it through some prosperity. It goes hand in hand. So I love that. What made you think of that title?
Well, Barrett, it took me a while to come up with the name, but I arrived at it because prosperity, as you mentioned, is something that we all crave. And prosperity means so much more than just financial prosperity. It means health flow. It means money flow, as well as a healthy and productive and growing relationship. All of that is called prosperity. And then the mindset, the second part of it, is what leads to the good and the positive manifestation of this good relationship, of good physical health, as well as good finances.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So what made you get into podcasting?
Well, I have been teaching for the past 11 years, and I taught live seminars in San Diego. And when COVID happened, all of a sudden we were restricted in our ability to gather. And the podcast was something that I decided to do because my gifts, my talents, my ability to help people was coming out of me sideways. And I said, okay, I got to do something. And I decided to create this podcast. I have some really good equipment at home, and it's been just an effortless way of me sharing the wisdom with the intention to help people understand that their inner mind, many, many, many thousands of layers, create their reality. So that's how.
Sometimes I wonder if that's a good thing. Many, many layers. Now, in that, do you have a particular audience that you go after to draw to your podcast?
Yes, the audience that I cater to are the ones that are spiritually oriented. Okay. And that means that they really value their freedom. They want to make their life better. They could be teachers, they could be parents, they could be business owners, they could be individuals from any walk of life, as long as they really want to improve. And they understand the necessity of the mindset, which is such a broad term. But what I do in my teachings, I break it down. And I also help people with private coaching who don't quite grasp the complexity of it. And I help them uncover what's really going on in their life so they can have the results they want.
Now, how do you pull that off in a podcast?
Well, the podcast is very segmented because if you just say the mind has 10,000 tricks, obviously I can only talk about one or two things and be effective at it. So what I focus on is give people a tangible, real life example, and then start peeling the layers back and showing them two things. One is that what has led to it has everything to do with the mindset and the strategies, which means the steps we have taken. And then what are the solutions? What are the steps that we need to take or my audience needs to take in order to correct the path or to get into a better situation? Gotcha.
Now, when you started your podcast, because we all have them, what are some of the stories of, oh my God, what did I do? What are some of those stories that you have? Yeah, you said you're laughing right now. What are some of the horror stories that you had in starting your podcast?
Oh my God, I am so incredibly sensitive to sound. Like if a mouse, crosses the road 100 feet from me, I go, so. So in the summertime, because I live in Phoenix, Arizona, outside or in my recording studio, the air conditioning unit would kick on. like every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I would hear it and go, oh God. So I had to train my mind, my mindset had to be improved, had to train my mind to filter it out and not take it in and not get all distracted by it. So that was one of the biggest challenges for me, because me being so auditory and auditorily sensitive has really caused me to just stop the recording, redo it. And it's such a waste of time, right? So,
I'm laughing because I did the same thing.
Can you relate? So, and of course, sometimes I forget to turn the recording equipment on, and all the blunders and all the things, and quite often when I was doing so well and I look over, I said, why isn't this thingy flashing? Oh no, so lots of blunders, but I think looking back, it's good. It's kind of like that, the list of things that I have overcome and I'm able to laugh at, because I tell you this, like even 15 years ago, if I had done or made these mistakes, I would have been really, 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 really upset. Even though if I tried to mask it and go, no, I'm fine. The ego kind of likes to hide and mask things. I was not fine. Today I'm fine. So that's really awesome.
And I'm glad you said that, because I brought that question up because somebody watching, somebody listening right now is saying, I don't want to do my podcast because I make mistakes. It doesn't matter. We all make mistakes. We all,
yes.
And you're going to continue making mistakes. I don't care if you're 5-10 years into it, you'll make a mistake. It's okay, because one thing I've noticed, and you tell me how you feel about this, Robert, that I think the people want to hear that you can make mistakes.
Yes. Well, what we are here to do, Barrett, is many, many things. And the number one thing is growing. And if we don't ever start, we cannot grow. And I remember one of my biggest challenges was to see myself on camera. You could put me in front of 1,000 people live in a huge auditorium. And it's like, pulling up a magical show. The moment I was in front of my cell phone alone, I had a meltdown. So what is that? The psychology of it is really different. So I decoded the psychology and actually have helped a lot of speakers and presenters overcome that same sort of frozen state.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we as professionals, so to speak, and I mean, put my air quotes up, we like to carry ourselves in a certain manner. And let me tell you, the average Joe or Jane listening, they really don't care that much as you do. They don't really care. They just want the content. And they want to know that the content is good, so exciting, fun, whatever it is that they came to listen for. You just have to deliver the content. Whether you think it's perfect or not, it's really irrelevant. So they just want to make sure it's good for them. It's what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know that for a fact. Now, how long have you been doing your podcast?
I started my podcast last year in 2020, early April. I believe April Fool's Day, April 1st. So just because it was a day where I felt inspired. And I made a new podcast episode once a week, but then several months later, I got really busy coaching and then teaching. So I stretched it out and I haven't done a podcast in the last couple months, which I plan to correct. I want to get back into the flow of things. It's been just so incredibly busy.
Okay. Now, I hear a distinct accent. Where are you from?
I was born in Budapest, in Hungary.
Where, I'm sorry?
Budapest, Hungary.
Budapest, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I want to ask you, because a lot of people have this question too about their podcast. Does your podcast reach there?
They can. It's worldwide, yeah.
Yes. See, that's what I try to get this across to everyone who talks about starting a podcast, is that the difference in podcasting and, say, doing a radio show is that you can go all over the world with it.
So true.
So true. What kind of feedback have you gotten from around the world, from internationally?
All kinds. And what's really cool about a podcast is that if somebody doesn't like it, just like a radio station, they can tune away or click away. So if you look at my feedback on iTunes, I have about 1,200 incredibly positive reviews and ratings. So the world needs this knowledge. And what differentiates me from, other mindset teachings is that I'm extremely practical. Like if somebody comes to me and says, hey, this is what's happening to me in my relationship. What's going on? I can break it down like to a T after a few questions and guide them through a process so that all that negative patterning stops. So the reviews have been amazing. I'm extremely grateful for my audience. They are enjoying, obviously, the knowledge. And today, Barrett, this knowledge is more important than ever. Because this knowledge allows us to become fear-free, to become free from anger, to understand the techniques, the subconscious techniques, to become one. Most people know what oneness is, or they know what separation is. You know, we point the finger at the outside, but really those are inner conflicts in us that we project on the outside. So I made a very, very practical system or set of systems that people can follow and really achieve the healing financially, physically, and in their relationship.
I love it. I love it. So in dealing with what you, because you have a business as well as your podcast. So do you find that your business feeds your podcast, or that your podcast feeds your business, or both?
Originally, the business was feeding the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a little while for people to get to know someone. You know, you've done this, you know it. Oh, wow, he sounds cool. He sounds different. I want to listen more. So people tend to engage with the content. And if they enjoy, they keep coming back. And then later they can decide if they want to book a coaching call and then, you know, hire me for their, as a coach, or take some of the seminars and the workshops that I offer. Now, the other aspect is that because I really enjoy teaching, and I can tell that you are a very passionate speaker, you know, it wants to come out of me. So that is my business, teaching. And my podcast is also a reflection of that. I have this incredible gift. I know how to help people super fast. Like whatever would take normally 25 years, you know, through traditional approaches, I can do it in a couple months.
Wow.
You know, so that's why I'm doing the podcast, is to share my gift, because my personal belief is, I'm sure a lot of the spiritual people would agree with me, is that when we give from the heart, it will come back to us multiplied.
Okay. So what would you say, in your opinion, is your proudest achievement of your podcast?
Well, it has been a kind of an interesting journey. The number of downloads surprised me, because obviously I'm not famous, but it's over 11,000. So, you know, it's really good considering it's only been up for a few months. What makes me proud is that I got to meet some really incredible brains, some really incredible people from around the world. And meeting these people who are authors, who are healers, who are here to really help humanity be uplifted or uplift humanity, and connecting to them at such a deeper friendship level is amazing. Now, I can tell that you've done a bunch of podcasts. I can tell that you're a really experienced speaker. I can tell where your heart is. It's really awesome. But I'm sure you also can tell that I like sincerity. And that is another part that, you know, makes me kind of unique, because I don't like the fluff.
Yeah.
I like honesty. I like integrity. I like people to just open up, and I will open up and go, hey, I've been through, you know, this awful circumstance and back, and here's how you come out of it, if that applies.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, Robert, your podcast, Prosperity Mindset, I love that title. I'm big on titles, because I tell people the title needs to tell people what they're going to get. And that right there tells everyone what they're going to get when they listen to your podcast. So before I let you go, man, I want to please have, if you could, tell the people where they can find your podcast.
Certainly. They can search my name or Google my name, Robert Szentes, Szentes, and the podcast should come up. Or I could share the links with you. It's also on my website, which is amindinstitute.com. My company is Advanced Mind Institute. So the URL is A Mind Institute, and halfway down, there's a link to my podcast.
All right. Thank you so much, man. I want to tell you, you're welcome to come back anytime on the Productive Podcast. I loved having you here today. But guess what, guys? He's going to stick around. We have one more segment after our break, and he's going to help us out with that, and that's our PodQuest segment. So, guys, stick around. We'll be right back with more of the Productive Podcast. Podcaster. And I can't wait to have you here with me, with Robert Szentes. So guys, stay tuned and we'll be right back with more of the Productive Podcaster.
You've heard the rumblings. You even thought about starting your own. But how? Everybody knows podcasting is the fastest and best way to get your message out and grow your business all at once. Although everybody knows this, nobody showed you what to do. Well, Podcast Nation is ready to do all the heavy lifting for you while you just deliver your message and grow. Join the nation and start your podcast today. Text podcast to 929-244-4323 and make them hear your voice.
Do you hear what I hear? That's the sound of your tribe, your audience, your people. That's the sound of your nation. The people who love to hear the sound of your voice as you bring your special message to them in your very own podcast. How do you get it to them? Let us handle that. We're Podcast Nation, and we make sure they hear your voice. Podcast Nation is a full-service podcasting firm that does all of the hard work for you so that you can be the talent and get your message to your people. Just text podcast to 929-244-4323 and talk to one of our staff on how you can get started with your very own done-for-you podcast. Or go to podcastnation.com and get started today. That's PODCAST nation.com. Your people are waiting on you. Make them hear your voice. Podcast Nation.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Productive Podcast. You know, I was right again. Robert knocked it out the park. He was fantastic, Robert Szentes. And guess what? He is still here for our segment that is called PodQuest.
PodQuest.
That's right, PodQuest. It's the segment where we answer the audience questions. So Robert is here to help me with that. And the question that we have from an audience member is, how long does it take to start a podcast? And Robert, I'll let you go first on that.
All right. So it actually takes one decision, and depends on how quickly you make the decision. It could be anywhere from half a second to it's an open thing, right? So it really doesn't take long. So you have to make a decision that you're going to do it. And I have seen that people have a couple of these hesitations about it. One is, do they have the right equipment? As long as you have a smartphone that has a good quality recorder, you can start and you can upgrade as you go. And then the number two concerns I see is, what about the content? Well, as you know, there's two different ways of doing podcasts, at least in the broader category: having your own content or finding people with content. So there's never a shortage of information that's needed. There's never a shortage of or gift needing to be shared. So that was my answer. It takes
I love it.
A fraction of a second.
I love it. My answer is going to be real short to that because Robert pretty much said everything. But how long does it take to start a podcast? How long does it take you to hit record? I mean, really, that's how long it takes to start it. Because, like Robert said, it's really a decision to make it. Now, as far as getting all of the editing and getting it put up on the platforms and so forth, yes, that can be tedious to some people. That's why my company helps people with that. I have a done-for-you podcast program that helps people to do that. All they have to do is record, send me the recording, and we take care of the rest for you. But for you who wants to start it, hit record. just hit record. That's all it's going to take. So that is PodQuest. That's our answer for that question. I want to thank you once again, Robert, for joining me on the Productive Podcaster. And you can stick around if you like, but I'm going to move on to our next segment in the show. So thank you once again for joining us. I appreciate you, Robert.
With pleasure.
Okay, so now we're going to our next segment in the show. And you're probably wondering, well, Barrett, what could possibly be next? What else could you do on the Productive Podcaster? Well, I'm going to let you know what's next. And next is our podcast profile. That's not our podcast profile. This is me telling you about a podcast that I happen to listen to that you may want to listen to yourself. And especially kind of goes in line with our guest today. And it's called Laws of Attraction Secrets with Robert Zink. Laws of Attraction Secrets with Robert Zink. If you know anything about the law of attraction and so forth, you may want to listen to this podcast with Robert Zink. That's Z-I-N-K. So you may want to check that out, listen to it yourself, and you may get some things out of it. Now it's time for our podcast giveaway on the Productive Podcaster. That's right, we give away prizes on the Productive Podcaster. This one goes to Lita Green. She gets a copy, an audio copy of my book, Why Didn't You Get It Done? To help you be more productive in your business and your life. So she gets a copy of that. Lita Green, you get a copy. Now, some of you may be sitting there thinking right now, well, Barrett, how come she gets the prize? How do I get one? Well, all you have to do is go ahead and subscribe to our Facebook group. And you're saying the Facebook group, what's the Facebook group? Well, it's the Productive Podcaster. So go ahead and make sure that you get in our Facebook group, but you have to add content. Now, by content, I don't mean go ahead and post your podcast in there. No, I mean engage. Talk to us about podcasting. Let people know how they can be productive podcasters. And that way, we'll know that you're serious and we can maybe call your name here on the show. So we're up to the last segment of the show, and this is my favorite part of the podcast. Yes, my favorite part. And that is where I give you a podcast productivity quote. A podcast productivity quote. As you know, I'm a productivity and profits consultant, and this question comes from, speaking of productivity, David Allen, who is a productivity guru, and his book, Ready for Anything, 52 Productivity Principles for Getting Things Done. I love that. So the quote is, when we truly need to do when we truly need to do is often what we feel like avoiding. When we truly need to do is often what we feel like avoiding. So here's the thing, guys. Whatever that thing is that you are putting off, that you don't want to do, just do it. Do it. Then it's done. It's that simple. And it's really that simple. I know you're thinking, Barrett, you oversimplified that. No, it's that simple. So once again, guys, I want to thank you guys for joining us on the Productive Podcast. So I ask that you please share this with everyone. Subscribe and share it. You can listen to us on Google. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio. You can even watch us on YouTube as well. I want to make sure you guys are sharing this and spreading the word for everyone to pay attention to the Productive Podcast as we bring you the best guests we possibly can, like Robert Szentes, as we did today. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And as I always say before I leave you, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to awe them all. And take action, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.